So my name is John Wester, and I'm the Catholic Archbishop here. In this Archdiocese, we have two of the dioceses in Albuquerque and Galilee. So, as Jay said, we put out a pastoral last January 11, 2022, called Living the Light of Christ's Peace, a conversation toward nuclear disarmament. But I want to emphasize this is from our Catholic point of view, pastoral for our Catholic Archdiocese, right? This is really a very important theme for many religions, ecumenical and interfaith religions throughout New Mexico. A lot of my ecumenical leaders that I deal with a lot and interfaith leaders are very much behind this movement of peace building and nuclear disarmament. I know one, for example, Daniel Layton, whom I knew from San Francisco, my hometown. He's a Buddhist monk who's now in Chicago, and he's very much in the forefront of these kinds of movements like nuclear disarmament. I know that my other Episcopalian and Lutheran bishop friends here in Mexico and beyond are very much behind it. So this is not just, our archdiocese, it's quite spread. I guess maybe what I might just do for a minute or two is just come at this from a different point of view from your perspective, and that would be from the moral perspective. That is an element of this whole question, and why it's such an urgent question, that there is that moral element. There's also the doomsday machine, nuclear winter aspect, the power of the nuclear weapons, the tensions, the geopolitical tensions we're experiencing today with Russia and Ukraine, of course, with China seeking parity and all of this. But there's also the moral dimension. And of course, for our tradition, our Catholic faith, Pope Francis, whom is really well liked even beyond the Catholic Church, frankly, sometimes more liked beyond the Catholic Church than within the Catholic Church, interestingly enough. So that's another question. He's a wonderful man. I love him dearly. He's having an operation as we speak, so keep him in mind. But he should be fine. But anyway, he moved the moral needle when he said that even possessing nuclear weapons is immoral. And when Jay pointed that out to me, I went, oh my goodness, that's an incredible statement. What do you do with that? Obviously, unilateral disarmament is not part of our, we wouldn't recommend that. But it makes this morally, what do we do with that? In 1983, the Catholic bishops put out a rather famous statement called the Peace Pastoral. And in that pastoral, they didn't allow for nuclear deterrence. They said that it would be okay, morally acceptable to have nuclear weapons as a deterrent. And actually, a lot of the people I've talked to since the publication of the letter often refer to that, how we've got to have our nuclear weapons. And you more than I, hear, of course, how a lot of people are saying now more than ever, we need more nuclear weapons. And we need hypersonic delivery systems, and we need artificial intelligence. We've got to be at the top of our game. When in fact, the opposite is true. This is an arms race that's worse than the first and more lethal, if that you can imagine. So I think that what the Pope Francis did was he took our 1983 U.S. pastoral and in a way made that one last argument go, poof, it's gone. So there's no longer, just frankly, as Jay could tell you better than I, if the United States had for its strategy simply deterrence, we wouldn't have the 5,500 or so missiles that we have. We would just have something. And that would be true for the other nuclear states. So clearly, and I just finished going to go reading Dan Ellsberg's book on the doomsday machine. And it's clear to me now, I rather firmly believe that our strategy has always been a first strike capability. It's never been apart from our strategy, no matter what the narrative might be. So I think that morally we need to be involved because obviously we're dealing with, from our perspective, the sanctity of human life. As you know, the Catholic Church speaks a lot about this, and there's this controversy often around it, different aspects of it. But in my mind, it's hard to think of a more pro-life issue than nuclear disarmament because it has the capacity, nuclear arms do, of really wiping out civilization as we know it. Even I'm working with the Prohibition, Archbishop Paul Etchen in Seattle. He's the Archbishop of Seattle. And he's going to join me and Jay and others going to Japan on July 31st. to commemorate the bombing in Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and August 9th, respectively. And he has in his archdiocese the 8 trident submarines, any one of which has enough firepower to destroy civilization, much less to get us out. So this is really an issue that involves us as a church morally very much. A lot of people say, why so? They say, well, Archbishop, why don't you stay in church or stay in your sacristy and say your prayers and leave the nuclear question to us politicians? Well, that chill goes up my spine when I hear that, because we've left it to the politicians since 1945, and look where we are. You know, we've had this proliferation, and we have had some success, of course. We went from 80,000 or so to what we have now, about 13,000 plus. So there has been some success, but that's obviously been turned around lately. So I think we have to be concerned because it is a moral issue. Frankly, anyone in a religion, you know, it's a human being. We all have a vested interest in this question. I mean, we'll also get blown up. So we in New Mexico realize it will be one of the first. I just finished reading, I don't know if you've seen it, Cormac McCarthy's book, The Road. And he also wrote No Country for Old Man. People are
Too depressing.
yeah, it's depressing. I don't read this at night. I think I turn my light off and I'd be there to spark my other. And I know you're probably talking about the whole nuclear winter and Armageddon, those possibilities, which of course, it seems like science fiction, I know. But when you start reading about this question, you realize that Secretary of Defense said some years ago, back in America, that the only reason we didn't get into trouble with the Cuban Missile Crisis was luck. And frankly, here in Albuquerque, probably know the atomic bomb dropped in Albuquerque once, but then it didn't go off because there were some fail-safe. I think two of the 3 didn't work. The 3rd one did work, if I'm not mistaken, and never detonated. And there's been examples. You see those movies with the Russian captain of the submarine who didn't fly when he should have, and it turned out not. It was just a cloud formation. So I think that the enlightened self-interest, from a moral point of view, looking at from a religious point of view, I believe firmly that only God can give life and only God can take life. That's my belief. And I believe that human beings have entered into, attributed to themselves godlike attributes, in terms of what we could do now. But frankly, I just don't think we're up to the task. We're too fallible, too many issues involved politically, just making mistakes, and who knows what. Certainly when Putin rattled his nuclear saber on February 24th of last year, I can remember brushing my teeth when I heard an NPR. I was frightened. It was the first time since 1962 when I was 12 that I can remember frightened by nuclear weapons, thinking that there might just be a possibility of us getting into and nuclear. So with that in mind, we wrote the letter. A little bit of a challenge here, obviously, as Jane mentioned, and here, we have here the industrial military complex is very much here. We get billions of dollars come to New Mexico every year for Los Alamos and Sandia Labs. There's a narrative there that we benefit from that money, but in reality, that's not true. I think Los Alamos itself, the people who work there benefit from that, but that money does not trickle down into New Mexico. We're the leading, we in Mississippi lead in areas we don't want to lead in. We have a lot of addiction, a lot of poverty, a lot of climate crime, homelessness. And so that money does not trickle down. Matter of fact, we have some studies that show that in Española, in that county there near Los Alamos, actually it's a burden to them because they have a lot of the people that work there live in Española, which is a very poor area to provide. So but it still remains, we are very conscious of that about people who work there, they make a livelihood there, and we're sensitive to that. And it's my belief that like in many revolutions, the industrial revolution, the technology revolution, that there will be, transition, and there will be hardship for some, but in the long run, we believe more jobs can actually be created, at least, creating parity, but probably more jobs. And then the labs are already doing things other than building or supporting. We also believe that the pit cores that they're developing now in Los Alamos are not necessary. The weapons we have now are tested, and but I speak in averages, Jay speaks in specifics, but I do think that that's another moral question. Spending this kind of money, and people are suffering here in the state and in our country in general, and poor are always the ones that usually bear the burden of these things. So I think that's another moral question, why we're very much involved in this issue. So as a consequence, we've been doing what we can to raise an awareness. That's why I wanted to make it a conversation, not an argument, not a debate, but a conversation. I want to learn from whoever wants to. We're going to have meetings more with scientists at Los Alamos and other people, parishioners. We have many deacons of the church, our church that work in Los Alamos. I asked one of them one time, because I first came here and was interviewing him to become a deacon. I said, how does that work with you? Are you okay working toward building nuclear weapons when you know that this can contribute to the killing people? And of course, it's not the situation. They want to say things that they want to hear. I didn't mean to put them on the spot, but I was just trying to have a conversation about it. So anyway, we're trying to heighten awareness. On July 16th, we're going to have an interfaith session event up in Santa Fe, and we'll have many religions represented as we commemorate the Trinity test back in 1945. And then on July 13th, 31st, I should say, there'll be Archbishop Pension and two of his staff, and four of my staff will be going to Japan. We're meeting with we've already been doing a lot of dialogue with the Archbishop of Nagasaki and the Catholic Bishop of Hiroshima. And they're very excited about our coming. We're excited about it. And we're going to involve ourselves. They've invited us to give talks and be part of the prayer services, masses, and other events that we'll be having there from August the 4th to the 10th. Then our hope would be at the end of it to have begun a very strong process for Santa Fe and Seattle, archdioceses, to become sister dioceses with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So we want to, this is our hope, and so this is not a fait accompli. We're just beginning the conversation toward this. So far, we've gotten positive feedback from the bishops and from many of our dialogue partners in Japan. And we're excited about it. I think it's a very wonderful way for us. Santa Fe, of course, the Manhattan Project, this is where it all began. Santa Fe, so long ago. And so we have, I think, a stake in this conversation. We would like to change the equation. Instead of being the diocese that brought the arms over to Japan, we'd like to work with Japan in this specific instance and bring peace through nuclear disarmament. Also, I'm not sure yet. We're coming out of bankruptcy, so I've got a lot going on here in the diocese. But at the end of November, I'd like to go back to the UN again for the Second States Party conference. What did we say? What's the TPNW? Yeah. Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Which, by the way, the Vatican was the first one to sign it, the first state, albeit a small state, but smaller than this campus, probably, but technically a state. So they were, Pope Francis is very strong at this point, hoping that the nations would sign it, especially the nuclear state. So those are some of the things we have coming up from our perspective, and I'll just stop there. I hope that's helpful, and I wanted to ask a question or two, make a comment, or tell me I shouldn't be doing this. Question. With the development of the nuclear bomb, it seems that people learned we can kill ourselves. We have that capacity. What do you think the spiritual significance is in the scope of religious history of that realization for people? How does that relate to spirituality? me, you over the question, how does the bomb, which can stress, relate to spirituality? For me, what it is the position we have in the presence of God, wherever you conceive of God, those who believe, should be deity, whatever, is one of humility. And so we approach, with respect, humility, awe, and wonder. In the Catholic Church, we speak of one of the gifts of the Holy Spirit is awe and wonder. And so, for us to have developed what we have, regardless of how we got there in World War II, and the Germans might have gotten it first, which was really done. But the point is, it's a lot of chutzpah for us to have done that. Now, granted, we can discuss how it happened, or it was going to happen anyway, or all this, but regardless, it did happen. And as human beings, regardless of our political affiliation, of a country we're from, or ethnicity, that was a line we should never cross, in my opinion. I remember hearing a lecture years ago from a wonderful sister. She was a scientist, she had a doctorate in science. And she, gave the usual thing about human beings have been around and people under 12-inch ruler. So all of creation, if you go to the Grand Canyon, was in far greater, the beauty of creation, the immensity, the beauty of all that we should be in awe, respectful. And of course, Pope Francis is without a seeing to respect Mother Earth. Climate change is something that's a huge issue for us. Again, we're full of something first and most. So for me, the spiritual end of it is that we need to rectify what we've done. Regardless of how it started, we have to say as human beings, goodness gracious, this is horrible. What have we done? We can't control this. And what she was saying at that time was about, genetic manipulation and inventing biological warfare with the possibility of each escaping, and there might be not the human race or whatever. But we have to be more humble. We have to be more off-field about God's creation. So from a spiritual point of view, I would approach nuclear weapons as, we committed the sin of pride. That was Lucifer's sin. He committed the sin of pride. He wanted to go to God. And so for us, we have to say, no, we need to be humble and we need to trench and go back. So we need to undo what we've done. So it's a big revelation. I hope that made it. And so
it's not my perspective personally, but I certainly respect the clarity.
I think you could also say from a non-religious point of view, just to respect the common good. That we've gotten to a point now where we can abolish the common good, we can abolish the all of it. So even if you're not a believer, it would still be, what is our role as human beings vis-a-vis creation, vis-a-vis genetics and all this kind of stuff. So the climate, how to preserve our planet for future generations. From that perspective, I think that speaks of the spiritual. And John really one of my heroes. And I think he was a very spiritual man. He was in love with nature, in love with the Sierras. That's my stomping grounds, the Sierras. So I think that's the spirituality.
I want to ask you if any groups of faith work, if you've ever engaged with the Mormon Church. And I ask that because they put out remarkable statements, I believe, in the 80s against the inevitable leagues in Utah. But I've seen nothing from them as the ICBM and currently developed their state. And I, as a journalist, reached out to the church for a simple comment. They got nothing. And just curious if you've ever engaged them.
Well, I was in Utah right here. So I love Salt Lake City. It's a beautiful place to raise a family. I have great good friends there. Russell Powers, a dear friend of mine, he's in a quorum of the 12. And we have good relationships, especially on the leadership level. Sometimes when you get out in the rural part of Mexico, Utah, there can be some conflict. But typically, my understanding, I can't speak for them obviously, but is that the Mormon Church is a little less willing to make specific statements on political issues. I think this, if I'm not mistaken, this is kind of part of their own theology, with the place they see themselves in the United States. They have a specific way of looking at their religion themselves in the United States, especially with the Constitution and the presidency and all of that. So my sense would be, don't quote me, this is off the record, journalists, is that they would not get involved with that. We did work with them on immigration questions. We wanted to get some strong statements to help our immigrants who are coming, especially back to Arizona, the C-10. So, so likely not to get too much. Probably.
Hi, that was great. My name is Alan Roebuck. I'm a nuclear winter scientist. And so seem very well educated about all these issues. It's great. I was wondering if you sort of answered the question when answering this question. You talked about getting together with people of different faiths, but do you also organize people with people who aren't religious? Because there's a lot of them too. So I was just wondering why you might limit yourself to that.
Right, I don't remember, the whole point of the letter was a conversation for a new government. Well, the conversation had to be with anybody and everybody. People who were diametrically against our position, people who are for it, people of faith, people of no faith, people who hate the Catholic Church, people who love the Catholic Church, everybody. So I think we're all involved. So I think we all have to be involved in conversation. So we don't limit it at all. Although I do come at it from our perspective, and that's what the letter would say. We do talk about the gospel and Jesus Christ as a peacemaker and all of that. But nonetheless, we do reach out there.
The Pope's, I'm not sure what it's called, Laudato Si, his long article about global warming, about climate change, was very open to people who are believers and not believers.
Supposed to take a lot of flack to that.
I thought it was great.
A lot of people told him you should again stick to your church and I'm glad he did that. That's a very, I think,
I'm not the president. Do you encourage Catholics in the community to speak out like you? Or, do you condone nonviolent demonstrations about the sort of work that's done here and that's only going to increase in the coming years?
I do, I'm hoping, we formed we reinstituted a Peace and Justice Commission in the Archdiocese, mainly as a consequence of this letter. And so I would like this to become a centerpiece of our pro-life activities in the Catholic Church. And I do encourage people to talk about it. I have to say that I feel sometimes like a skunk in a long barge because no one wants to talk about it. Most people want to talk about death and nuclear Armageddon, and they just don't want to talk. They want to stay in the same show. So when you bring it up, they say, oh, it's like what you said to St. Paul the Areopagus. That's very nice, Paul. We have to hear that from you some other time. And they walked away. So that is an issue. The priests here, I love our priests, are great, but they're not. I explained it to them and they were, oh, thank you. So I think a lot of times we're speaking to the choir. I do condone, I do support nonviolent demonstrations. That's a question in of itself, how far to go and all of that. But I do think there's a place for that to be prophetic. I think we need to get the word out. So I'm not. Thank you, everybody.